Assalamu alaikum and hello. Welcome to our audience and a special thank you to our panelists for today. We have Zafar Iqbal Karanori Saab, who most of us would know as one of our more memorable and revered instructors, and Mr. Ali Masood Hayat Sahab, Advocate Supreme Court, who is one of our top litigators and trial lawyers in Lahore. He has been practicing for over 27 years now and is perhaps best placed to give his opinion on our topic for today. The topic chosen for today's conversation is the amendments brought to the Code of Civil Procedure 1908 through amendments made in 2018 and 2020. These amendments have recently been enforced and have been met with significant resistance from the legal fraternity and have which has sort of made these amendments controversial. While there can be no cavil with the proposition that the current state of affairs before our courts are quite bad, to put it mildly, and there needs to be a change in status quo, whether these amendments seek to correct that is something which has become sort of an open question. After the amendments went into force, there were strikes called by various bar associations and the Bar Council, even resulting in a mismatch where even today we are not really sure whether these amendments are being followed and how to practically implement them. Now, we're going to start off this conversation by getting an overview of the amendments that has been made, the objectives which the amendments seek to implement, and the ills in the civil procedure setup that these amendments seek to cure. So to start off with, I'm going to hand the floor off to Kalanori Saab so that he can give us a brief overview of the objectives of these amendments and some salient features of them. Kalanori Saab, it's in your hands now.
Thank you so much. Uh, when you talk about civil trials, the rules of the game is Civil Procedure Code, which was enacted as back as in year 1908. And on the criminal side, we have a Criminal Procedure Code as well, which is with regard to the criminal side. Now, this code is in two parts. One, the substantive part, there are sections, 159 sections to be precise. And then there are order and rules, which we call Schedule 1 of the CPC. Well, as far as the substantive part is concerned, if you want to bring in some change or amend those sections, you need to go to the parliament. And by virtue of this 18th Amendment to the Constitution, now this is the provincial subject. So there is a change in substantive law also, substantive part also. And this is by virtue of two amendments. One is Code of Civil Procedure Punjab Amendment Act 2018. And another one is Code of Civil Procedure Punjab Amendment Ordinance 2020. Incidentally, I'm also one of the architects of these two substantive part amendments. And as far as this Schedule 2 is concerned, there is one section which is written in the Civil Procedure Code itself, that is Section 122 of CPC, which says that the high courts in their jurisdiction can amend this part, the Schedule 1 order and rules, according to their own needs, and there will be a rules committee. And the constitution of the rules committee is again given in the code itself, which consists of 3 judges, and one of these high court judges has to be from the lower cadre. I mean to say he has to be one who is elevated to the bench from the district judiciary side. And then there are 2 layers of eminence which have to be part of this. There was one such committee formed by Justice Mansoor Ali Shah, and Justice Aminuddin was its head. And consecutively, 3 committees were formed by Justice Yawar Ali and then Justice Anwarul Haq also. So if you want to bring in change in these rules, if the committee recommends some changes, these changes then go to the full court. From full court, I mean total number of judges in that particular high court, like in Lahore High Court, the strength is 60 judges. These amendments took a very long time to bring in changes and make recommendations. We went to all the stakeholders, to the bar associations, we advertised them in the newspapers, we went to top class judicial minds like Justice Fazal Karim, Justice Saqib Nassar, Justice Izadul Hassan, Justice next Chief Justice Umar bin Dayal Saab, and we discussed them in detail before bringing these changes. I tell you, because of these changes, there have never been such a huge scale changes in CPC since it was enacted in 1908. What precisely are these amendments? We have distributed the civil trial into two parts, one pre-trial and one post-trial. When I say pre-trial and post-trial, what is important to look at is that we have bring in a concept of administrative judge. And if you look at Order 4, which says once the suit is registered in terms of Order 4, Rule 2 CPC, it shall immediately be placed before an administrative judge who will be duly notified by the High Court. Now, the administrative judge will look at the stage of the case until it is ripe for trial. When I say ripe for trial in civil sides, the trial starts when issues are framed. On the criminal side, the trial starts when charge is framed. So until that, administrative judge will be seized of the case, and he will be doing certain things as, case manager. Right now, he was a silent spectator. If one of the parties wants to delay, there is nothing he could do about it. We have turned around and given control to the judge. So he will ask the parties to do certain things. What are those certain things? Starting from filing of the plaint, there are a number of documents which are appended under Order 13, Rule 1, Order 7, Rule 14, the reliance list, the address of the parties and list of legal representatives. Once this is done, you file it, and then the summons are to be served upon the defendant. So by virtue of the amendments to the substantive part, we have brought in the use of new techniques and these new instruments, whereby now the process server, once he goes to the defendant along with all these documents, and he can even take their photograph on their mobile phone. And if a representative of that defendant is there, his photograph, or the place where he affixes the summon, he can take a photograph of that also. And his movement will also be monitored, so that he is not sitting in one other land reporting something which is happening in DHA. So you file copies of all these documents in court. When I say all the defendants, number of defendants, number of copies, 2 additional copies. Why? I'll come to that later on. And then the written statement is to be filed. You have not to wait for the date of hearing for filing written statement. Prior to that, you have to do it. You have to do it, and you have to append all the documents, and you have to give 2 extra copies of that along with the number of copies as our number of plaintiffs. Once this is done, you appear before the court. And when you appear before the court, now court will examine the parties in person. And once they examine the person to seek certain clarifications, and then there is concept of admission and denials. We have devised certain forms. You look at the appendix, it is form 13, 14, and 15. Now this is case management. There is a certain homework which is to be done by the plaintiff. There is a certain homework which is done by the defendant. And then there is a joint case statement, pre-trial stage. Judge is to have a checklist. You have done this and this and this. Admission denials taken care of. Production of documents taken care of. Then issues will be framed in the presence of the parties, and only those issues will be framed which really arise out of the case. Right now, you take number of preliminary objections, all those are resolved into issues, and trial goes on. This will narrow down the controversy. Then on the 7th day, you are supposed to file a list of witnesses in court in presence of the judge. Once this is done, now the administrative judge's part is over. But to clarify one thing, if there are certain interlocutory applications like injunction orders, these will be dealt with the administrative judge. Now, from here onwards, significant importance is to be attached to Order 9A and 9B. We have introduced the concept of ADR. which was there under Section 89A. We have a whole set of mediation courts all over Punjab. In fact, we developed one mediation center in each district of Punjab, which is in place. We didn't have the mandatory backing. Now the referral is mandatory. You settle it or you not, you will have to go through this process. We have accredited these judges, which are there doing it free of cost. They will be referred to mediation court, and within 30 days, if something is settled, the mediator will sign the settlement and refer it back to court. He will pass, the judge will pass, this judge will pass judgment in accordance with Order 23, unless it is unlawful. Now, 50% of the cases go this way, and if it is not settled within 30 days, back to square one, they come to court, and court will direct it is after like 2 months, but then there'll be a day-to-day hearing before the trial judge. Now, trial judge has been given a power that he can either record the evidence himself or entrust it to a local commission. Here comes the use of those extra copies which parties will be filing. The original file will not be handed over to the local commission. He'll be recording the evidence and he'll report it back to the trial judge. Now there is a new concept of skeleton of arguments which is to be submitted in a court of law. And before the trial judge will submit a skeleton of arguments along with the case law which you are relying upon, both the parties. And then on the 7th day, he'll be hearing the arguments. And on the 14th day, even 15th day will not come, he will give you a judgment and decree in your hands. And parties will be able to get it. And then there is automatic conversion of this judgment and decree into execution, the way it is done under the financial institution ordinance and before the banking courts, automatic. The real problem lies when a judgment is passed in your favor. It will never be implemented. It is a piece of paper. We have done a lot of homework on Order 21, which happens to be the largest order containing 100 rules. We have put in very stringent conditions, like you have to attach a property of the defendant once a decree is passed against him. If it is not passed, he'll have to submit a security for that. Even he cannot alienate this property any further and create a charger, and court will be sending this decree to the relevant authorities like Revenue Authority so that third party interest is not involved into it. And if you want to alienate it during pendency of a case or execution, you will have to seek the permission of the judge. And in case of recovery suits, you will have to deposit the amount or the security. So then you go to appeal. The appellate court will not be holding this process of service once again. He'll be asking the executing court to send the parties one stage up. And it has been written that he will not give reasons in case he dismisses an appeal because judgment of the lower court prevails. But if he is to improve it, turn it around, or make some changes, only then he will give reasons. So this is all, timeline is there. Maximum 6 months time will be consumed, not beyond that. Now where the problem lies, why people are, agitating. In the first place, we said when these amendments were brought in, and when the cabinet passed in year 2018, that was the interim government, we brought in one change that the Chief Justice in charge will just implement these amendments to a district for a period by way of pilots. And we chose 3 pilot districts in the first place. The Saraiki Belt, Muzaffargarh, Central Punjab, Kasur, and we had Jhelum in this Potwari Belt. And we wanted to run it for 6 months and train the judges and the lawyers also. We trained the judges also. Then changes came in, and now new Chief Justice here. They implemented it on 2nd of November. They implemented it across the board in whole of Punjab, not by way of pilots, without training the judges, without training the lawyers, without training the administrative staff of the courts. And here creates the whole problem. We are 62% of Pakistan, Punjab, but litigation-wise, we are 84% of Pakistan. I believe here we went wrong. We should have introduced it by way of pilots. We should have, prepared a bench book for the judges, trained the lawyers also, take them along. Now these are being implemented in haphazard manner, and here lawyers are not wrong 100%. I go with them. And my suggestion to the Chief Justice and the concerned people is that take the stakeholders on board, and you need their help. And if possible, you introduce a new notification whereby police started with pilots. And if you are adamant to do it across the board, even then, on, war footings, trainings must be held. Training manuals should be prepared. Senior lawyers should be taken along, judges, and then these great changes, which are now germane to the present world scenario where we have become a global village. After Wolf reform, England has changed. We have to change it too, because we cannot afford this system which is insufficient, which is not delivering. People are fed up. If grandfather files a case, maybe sometimes his third generation will get justice. And once the system starts delivering, everybody will be happy with it. Thank you so much.
So the conclusion that comes out from hearing you is that the primary objective of these amendments was to reduce the amount of time that parties spend in litigation, and the objections that have come up to the implementing this new system has more to do with the manner that the implementation has been done, and not the nature or the merits of the amendments themselves. It's that the amendments have not been introduced through a coherent method. With that background in mind, Alisa, as a regularly practicing lawyer, what would your comment be? I mean, there's a sense which comes out that perhaps there was not enough consultation with the concerned stakeholders, and maybe that is why this reaction from the legal fraternity is coming out, or that the bar was not taken into confidence with these amendments. There are also certain concerns that the amendments are not necessarily coherent and may contradict other provisions of the code. And the amendments seek to reduce the amount of involvement that a lawyer has in structuring the case. Now, with the background that Kala Nouri Sahab has shared with us and these concerns in mind, I would like to hear your views on these amendments.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I would like just to read the preface of a legendary lawyer since passed away last month, Amir Raza Khan Sahab. And the comment was very apt. Here lies the actual solution that was diagnosed as far as 1.5 years back, May 2019. While making this edition, the preface was delays occurring in the finalization of civil litigation have over the years generated criticism, often misplaced. Overlooked is the role of faulty implementation of procedural laws, both on the part of legal fraternity and the courts. After all, this very system is responsive in many common law countries worldwide. As was observed by Kekosje, quote, the proper place of procedure is to help and not to thwart the grant to the people of their rights, and technicalities has to be avoided. And Mahmood J. quote, every procedure is to be understood as permissible till it is shown to be prohibited by law. The court itself says the inherent powers of the court to prevent abuse of process of the court and further the ends of justice. Furthermore, the court vests the High Court with authority to make rules to regulate the procedure of civil courts and to annul, alter, or add to any of the rules of the court. Inaction in this behalf lends some credence to the question being raised. The Rules Committee of High Court need to continuously review them. Now, taking this perspective in view, the effort is always, it is a man-made laws. Over the years, it does require amendment. Now, with the objective of getting expeditious disposal, the whole civil litigation, even up to the level of Honorable High Courts, the gamut of a total sum of the trial, you can enumerate very safely in 8 to 9 steps. The filing of the plaint, notices, summons, written statements, stay, decision, framing of issues, then list of witnesses. Next step, evidence of the plaintiff, evidence of defendant, rebuttal, if any, arguments, oral or written, and the judgment. Now, these are 9 enumerations against which the trial is to move. And for this facilitation, as rightly said, 2 substantive parts. One is section, the other is the explanation of the sections, how the machinery of law is to run in terms of procedure. But at some point, this procedure law is substantive when it gives some right, and impression should not always be that justice rushed is going to be justice crushed. We have to come out from this. 2, CPC as a whole well defined by my learned friend. The purpose of amendment, not necessarily CPC, any other law. Smooth trial, expeditious decision, technicalities to be avoided, justice not only done but seems to have been done, exercise of discretionary powers of the court on 2 main principles: sufficient cause where lies what the law commands and where are the good causes, and where procedure is silent, the inherent part of the court, yes, it is permissible. The whole idea of this amendment has to be contextualized in terms of whether inconsistent with substantive part, which are the sections, and the practical hazards now being faced over a period of, let us say, 1.5 months. Courts are now right now closed. Immediately, what problems are being faced by the lawyers? Rightly said, yes, the lawyers community as a whole, even at the district levels, even at the bar levels, were not taken into confidence, and it was a rushed move. It could have been more rational. It could be a pilot project. I don't endorse the idea of going for strikes. Things can't settle. They need dialogue. You must sit on the table, understand what the law says, and if the early disposal of the cases are going to be halted because of some technicality, overcome it. Let the litigant have a fair chance. The cliche developed, rest is just, rest is denied. We have to overcome it. Technicalities and the procedure of law is meant to foster justice. Administration, it is not that let me use a law term, when you acquire somebody land, you do not give him the price, you compensate them. It is inherent in the courts itself that for this particular idea, the administration and the courts have been separated. And this, because of this particular idea, judicial powers exercise is always with some flexibility. According to the circumstances, the conduct of the parties are very relevant, not only in the trial, but even in the appellate stages. Right now, the amendment introduced somehow, perhaps I would say with confidence, that our lawyer fraternity has not properly appreciated the total gamut. Where are the overlappings? How the sections and orders newly introduced are inconsistent, and a concept of administrative judge as a pre-trial judge vis-a-vis a trial judge. In terms of practical implementation, the hazards we are going to face. Are they fostering? Are they contributing in expeditious disposal? To be very honest, as a practicing lawyer, a file moves from one court to another, even for the purpose of appeal, it takes a lot of time than it is actually visualized. There may be sets of two courts, A and T, A for administration and T for trial court, and they are coherent that the file goes there, but still goes there. There are urgencies. Now, whether these amendments as a whole are fostering that end or not, I would say with all confidence that it is almost too premature to judge the total efficacy of these amendments right now. But on academic side, while going through, there are certain overlappings, and overlappings in times to come contribute in terms of appeals, reviews, that ought not be the very aim of the amendments. Let us put a finality to a trial that if it is done in a particular manner, but the objective of the law and the amendment is it must be achieved. Courts are less burdened. But at the same time, with all humility at my part, I found Order 4A inconsistent with the very idea of expeditious disposal of the cases. Right now, on academic side, still needs a little study more. Section 3 of CPC says that courts hierarchy would be the one which are being governed by Punjab Civil Court Ordinance 2002.
Yes.
And there is no concept of administrative and civil judge over there. If Section 3 is to be adopted as a court, now from where the concept of trial court and administrative court is being introduced? How? Is it not inconsistent in times to come? A new debate will not follow. 2, the administrative judge, by the very name given and the functionalities that are given as a pre-trial, including the disposal of the interlocutory applications, to my understanding, the entire process, right from the filing of the suit till the time you get the certified copy, is a judicial process. Is a judicial process. There are certain orders, there are certain sections which have been made limited to the extent of administrative judge. Let us take the case of Order 7, Rule 11. Good amendment made. Yes. Rule D amended in the manner that you can see a document also in deciding the application. But the application is going to be accepted. Fine enough, Rule 11A, it has to be filed with written statement. But somewhere in Section 26D, it says that application could be filed independently of that, probably Section 29 or 33. But it doesn't stop the period of written statement filing. It's overlapping. It is good that you have streamlined the process serving through modern devices, make the process serving more credible. It will contribute, even if more particularly on those cases where the orders are passed ex parte. You have to come across that hurdle first, that, well, you were really not served. Good addition. Copy of written state plain along with the documents, good addition. Electronic, good addition. But at the same time, if Order 7, Rule 11 is to be invoked by an administrative judge, then a degree is going to be passed. And there are certain interlocutory orders in which the suit is going to be dismissed but no degree is to be framed. This is what section 2 degrees definition says itself. And by doing this, the scope of Order 43, Rule 1 has been narrowed down. Bear me out, there is a marked difference in exercise of appellate jurisdiction even for the purposes of orders. But same judge sitting as a revisional court with a different set of mind, different set of law. A little impression given as if we are just wanting, because of time lag, because of making the case to be decided in a particular period of time, we are just trying to just kill it, make it open, relate it always to the conduct of the parties. Through these amendments, an impression given, the judges are now to act more particularly certain time limits, penalties, dismissal of suit. It's a mechanical manner. Judicial process is not mechanical. It varies from case to case. Powers are inherent with the court. And for this particular reason, everybody who has no idea what to do rushes to section 51. But more bigger is section 94, supplemental proceeding. In order to do complete justice, the judge can do anything, leaving that a particular thing to be done in a particular manner. For this reason, there is some discrepancy found in Order 4A. It needs a little revisitation. 2. Order 9B, having its genesis in conciliation process, mediation process. The opening Rule 1 probably is inconsistent with Section 89A for the purposes of Punjab alone. My learned friend just said that it is made compulsory, mandatory for the parties, just to have, and even if it is not going to be successful, come back. And still the power given to the court that they can determine the parameters within which the determination is to be made. And if an agreement is reached, still jurisdiction with the court to decide in terms of Order 23, Rule 3, whether this agreement is lawful or not. Yeah. Whether it is fostering, whether it is contributing in expeditious disposal of the case. Already Order 89, Section 89A is there. Order 10, Rule 1A is already there. Allow me to read Order 10, Rule 1A, same language what Section 89A says. And yet through this particular amendment, 91B, the parties are made to, I would say, compulsorily to go to mediation. Where goes the concept?
Even though the language of Section 89A may not make it mandatory.
Yes. This is what Order 10 Rule 1A already says. It is always with consent of the party. Perhaps our learned friends, over the years, I have yet not seen an arbitration clause invoked other than court of law, through court of law. The way a arbitration act having 40-odd sections, the litigation never right. The litigation never right. Because of what? Because of the tendency of the people in not trusting the mediation, in not trusting the arbitration. Secondly, immediate problem that I came across is the Appendix C, Form 13, 14, and 15. 14 meant for the plaintiff. Now there are certain formations, certain columns, admission of facts, what I should write if there is no written statement on record. What I'm going to write, how I would visualize without any written statement, there could be these issues. It sounds good for the purpose of defendant, but at least not for defendant. And Form 13 meant for the court is certification given that a additional duty to the lawyers, perhaps appreciated by a bunch of people, maybe politically motivated even. I don't want to do certification in terms that the lawyer certifies that he has made his party understand that this is going to happen. May I read for the convenience? This is Form 13. Certification by advocate. I so and so advocate for the plaintiff defendant certify that I have explained to the plaintiff defendant the procedures in the case management and CDR, and he has understood the same. It sounds good for those people who can understand this particular language. Litigants in Pakistan even can't write their names, what to talk of anything else. How do you make them understand? The question is that there were strikes probably because of, probably, I'm not sure about it, probably because of it. The idea that there had been strikes, they're uncalled for. I don't believe in it. This controversy, if at all, it should have been settled on table. Probably the bars, more particularly the cabinets, are feeling as if they were not made part of that particular exercise. Probably. This may be one of the reasons. Then, Order 43, Rule 1, with all humility on my part. Order 43, Rule 1 and deletion of A part, A, Clause 1A, Order 7, Rule 10, return of the plaint is no more appealable. Obviously, the suit is going to be returned with no degree is going to be made by the court.
Yes.
Now it is revisable. And if the aim is to make litigation less expensive, a continuous right, and to my understanding, appeals against orders to some extent may be considered as continuation of the suit. Maybe. Even if the case is going to be finally decided and the judgment in degree is passed, the appeal is continuation of the suit. It can be very safely, to a lesser extent, but safely can said that orders which are appealable, more particularly when the case vanishes from the court, it needs a little revisitation. As I just referred to the preface of the Delegate Lawyer, No More in This World, the fault lies both in terms of the one who is asking for this implementation and the one who is receiving it and who is to implement it. Rightly pointed out that it was in a haphazard manner. Lahore being the station where every now and then, even now, big lawyers do come. What are the experiences of the pilot districts? Are they one which did require some revisitation? Or if without doing that thing? But having said all, with the passage of time, any man-made law needs amendment, but with two basic principles. One, justice rush should not justice crushed. Two, technicalities do not impede the process. And three, don't regulate the proceeding in a mechanical manner. Take it judicial. There
Let the
is,
judges have some discretion in how
yes. Why not? A confidence lost always or already on the court of law will still lose when the technical aspect is going to be implemented for this particular end. On the whole, the best part of this particular amendment is Order 21. Order 21. The best part of these amendments is Order 21. Yes, it is true, it is easier to get a judgment and still difficult to implement it. This is, I think, and in times to come, one has to visualize that any judicial verdict implemented through court of law, if in times to come, it is again, let us say that there is a decree for possession of a property. You took the possession through bailiff of the court. You make a statement before the court, yes, sir, it has been satisfied in letter and spirit. And the moment you turn back to your property, you saw another gentleman has dispossessed you. A new round of litigation will start. These are the practical things which needs a little consideration of the honorable judges and the honorable committee also. Having said and done, there is little premature to actually gauge are the dividends there or not. Little premature, but they're finding some lapses. I am sure in times to come, there would be many revisions, if not appeals. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your insight on this. So, the primary thing that comes out from Ali Saab's analysis of these amendments is that perhaps the amendments have made civil procedure too mechanical, too technical. The discretion of our judges has been removed to a great extent, and them modifying procedure as per the facts and circumstances that reflect before them or that come out from a particular trial, maybe that discretion is no longer there. With these concerns in mind, and there are some inconsistencies insofar as filling out the forms, for example, is concerned. So for example, I had an issue recently while filing a case where the administrative side was asking me to tell them whether I've spoken to the counsel for the opposing party. Now, I don't even know who the counsel for the opposing party is. Now, whether that is something that has come out because of the rushed sort of implementation of these amendments, or maybe there are certain aspects of these amendments that may need revisiting. Before getting your opinion on it, there are a couple of things that have come up, and I would like the views of both of you on this. Ali Saab referenced Order 7, Rule 11, and the fact that it no longer, it's a right that can no longer be claimed through a separate application. You have to file a detailed written statement, and in your written statement, you take whatever grounds that you have under Order 7, Rule 11 for claiming that a suit is not maintainable. Now, the conventional wisdom sort of that went behind Order 7, Rule 11 was that I, as a defendant, should not have to disclose all of the facts that are in my possession if a suit is not maintainable under law. Why should I be made to go through that whole process, that I inform the court of all the documents in my possession, I let the party into each and every single aspect of my transaction, which I may otherwise not need to disclose if the suit is not maintainable, and that disclosure may become redundant. However, now that the disclosure has been made, the other party may capitalize on anything that has formed part of that disclosure. So this is one thing I would like your comment on, from both of you, Ali Saab and Kana Noori Saab. We'll start with Kana Noori Saab.
Let me respond to it because this is something very, very important before we talk about reforms. I tell you, Rome was not built in a day, but it was built all right? So whenever we try to bring in changes, people say, oh, these are people with big heads, don't try to touch them. If you touch them, you will, aap patthar ke ho jaoge. This is what they say. I told them, the people who gave us this law, they have changed it way back after Wolf reform. We're going to change it. This is not catering to the present day needs. This is the first thing. And then reform is not a final thing. You keep on reviewing it. We don't say that this is the final thing we are going to. That's why I say run it by way of pilots. And you need a change. But most of these amendments cater to the already situation which is on ground, which is in CPC already. We only emphasize it. Like you say, you are to file a written statement within 30 days, 30 days means 30 days. We made it mandatory. We only, emphasize on it. Production of documents, examination of parties, admission denials, these things are always there. When we started practice, we used to do it. Now people are not doing it. We say, no, you ought to do it. I refer to section 128. There is an amendment brought, which is, we have introduced clause K, whereby case management, this is now recognized in the substantive part of CPC. And when you talk about this administrative judge, he is a judge too. We are not giving this pass to a clerk. He is a judge too. So we need not have any change in the court's ordinance for that purpose. What is being misunderstood is that you are to fill up these performas or forms once written statement has been filed, once exchange of documents has taken place, once admission denials have been done, once parties have appeared in person and their evidence, their statement has been recorded, then you are all empowered to fill up these forms. What is presently being done, they say do it at initial stage. You are not supposed to do it at initial stage. This is how it is being implemented wrongly. This is what I say, they don't understand.
If I may interject.
Let me respond to Order 7, Rule 11 also. That's very important. There have been many judgments starting from Supreme Court, and they said you should not file separate application for Order 7, Rule 11. You can take up this objection in written statement, or if you want to file it, file it. And then there are judgments which says that all the documents and all the record is to be taken care of while deciding application under 7 Rule 11. This is what we have done. Why take people by surprise? Whatever I file in court, the other party is entitled to have a look at it. Why I hold on? I should not be allowed to hold on. If this becomes a grievance, and this is done in the substantive part also, that filing of application under 7 Rule 11 will not give party an excuse to delay the filing of the written statement. We have gone to the extent that you are to file a written statement by that date, not particularly on that. Then if the court then lingers on, aakhri mauka, katai aakhri mauka, har jaane ke saath mauka, that is so funny. That gives to a lot of litigation as well. And I don't mind if civil revisions are filed. After all beautiful law and all interpretations have taken by way of this civil revisions. We are not shutting it out, and we are not akalekul, we discuss things. We have laid something. We need not fail it this way, that you don't enter into any discussion and say this is a final verdict. There is no such thing as final verdict. This is as compared to Constitution of Pakistan, where People's Party takes it personally. They say 18th Amendment, this is say, if I ask money, don't change it. There are a lot of problems with regard to education, problems with regard to health, and so on and so forth. Things can be revisited also. Amendments is a continuous process. Committees are there, assemblies are there. these can be taken care of. But believe you me, in present state of things, I am only putting in money into my pocket and there is no end to it. And you will have to take care of one thing also. ADR Act 2019 is already there, and mandatory referral to a mediation judge is supported by that. That is a special law that will override it. Don't read 89A in isolation. Don't read Section 9B and 9A and 9B, these orders in isolation of all these laws. These are catered to all these, and then the facts are facts. Our mediation courts, their settlement rate is like 85%. 40 years old case settled within a period of like 2 sessions, 3 hours, 4 hours. In America, 95% of the cases are not settled outside the courtroom. This is not fashionable anymore to delay things. No, mediation is taking over. Arbitration is taking over. Arbitration in Pakistan is a failed phenomenon because 1940 Act is there. I have, drafted a new law, and there is a mandate from Supreme Court by virtue of Constitutional Petition 14 of 2017, which has been accepted, and the Punjab government has undertaken to have a new ADR Act framework, which is already there. A new petition has been filed in High Court. Why this is not being implemented? Very soon you will have a new 1940 Act where the arbitration award will be per se enforceable at law. It will be only subjected to judicial review before High Court. If there is a blunder or error apparent in the face of the record, it is unlawful, like it is in England. So gone are the old days. Why don't the lawyers become mediators now? Why don't they become arbitrators now? Why we are delaying it? I get my fee up front. If a case is settled within a short period of time, this is good for me. We will go and appeal. People will have confidence. Instead, it is lingering on. We are not, we are not allowed soliciting. Just inform, pay nothing. We have devised a strategy where costs will now follow the event. Frivolous litigation will be gone. Section 35A amended, 35A amended, 35 amended. All sort of frivolous litigation is nip the evil in the bud. An illegitimate suit is to be burned at its inception. These are High Court rules. Judges to look at this suit very clearly. This is not he will issue notices in every case. I claim that this Minare-Pakistan is mine and you issue a notice on that. This judge is under a bounden duty. After all, you say judge should wear all laws on his sleeve and party is not obliged to engage a counsel even. Here you engage a counsel and things go on and on. Now, believe you me, half-cooked, half-baked, lawyers will not go on, half-cooked, half-cooked, judges will not go on. We all need to learn, and then there is a concept of continuing legal education. When I went to law school, I didn't have concept of this ADR, this environmental law, these DNAs, these computer, digital, and forensics. I learned them now. And in England, if you want to get your license extended, you have to go through certain amount of continuing legal education. Even places like China, 52 hours continuing. The judges need to learn, the lawyers need to learn, we all need to learn at the academies, we need to go back to the law school also, we need to learn at the bar associations, and this is how we gain from each other. And now this is a collective wisdom around the globe. People are taking benefit and people are fed up from delayed justice, because delayed justice is no justice at all.
Fair enough. That point is definitely fair. Before I move on to a few questions that I have and a few questions that are some of our listeners have posed.
Arisa, for Order 7 Rule 11?
Yes. Yes, please.
There's still, I feel, discrepancy in times to come. In case the application, okay, fine, Section 33 says that you can file an independent application, but still within the time frame, you have to file written statement. Fine enough, good. Order 7, Rule 11, okay, documents. But in terms that if it is written in the written statement itself, the grounds are 7-11, then an issue of law is to be framed. An issue is to be decided by whom? By the trial court, not by the administrator. Now, these are these.
Sorry. I'm just
these have to be
there are stages. If an
issue of
application
law
is
is going to be
filed at a
preempted.
stage when
Sure.
when the case is with the administrative judge, he will decide that interlocutory application. If it is filed with the trial judge, he will decide it at that point of
Now,
time. There is no contradiction in that.
If,
We
if
will
I
not
could
be going from
kindly,
one court to
if,
the other.
it holds
if
good
I could
for a-
respectfully intervene, sir, going back to the question that was raised with reference to Order 7, Rule 11, the problem that I perceive here is, and again, this is something that has been asked from one of our participants as well, that if full disclosure of facts may be unnecessary for me as a defendant to make to the plaintiff. However, if I am being required to raise my objection regarding a legal maintainability of a particular suit, why should I be made to disclose all the facts that are with me? That issue, I believe, is a serious one and may discourage, which may even make the Order 7, Rule 11 redundant, because I've disclosed everything that there was in my powers to disclose because I've had to file this written statement. And now the case can either be decided as a preliminary thing on Order 7, Rule 11, or the case may be decided after recording of evidence. But everything is now out in the open, which is perhaps unfair to a party against whom a suit should not even proceed because it is not maintainable under Order 7, Rule 11. Perhaps maybe setting timelines for deciding such an application would have been a prudent, perhaps would have been the preferable way of going about it.
Sorry for interjecting. I couldn't agree with this point at all for reasons.
Okay.
We have to reread Order 7, Rule 11. It has 4 conditionalities. 1, a plaint is to be rejected when it does not disclose a cause of action. Secondly, if it is not properly valued for the purpose of jurisdiction, the jurisdiction value is to be corrected by the timeline given by the court. If it is not, the proper court fee has not been paid, court asks you to pay the court fee. This is 3 things. And 4th is barred by law. Now, over here, you look at barred by law, we have written that Section 9, it has been amended. Section 9 says, the civil courts are courts of ultimate jurisdiction. And every civil suit is competent before a court of plenary jurisdiction, the civil court, unless the jurisdiction is either impliedly or expressly barred. Now, we have added something more. If it is barred by a particular law, right? So we have made it more clear that, like, if there is a service matter and Article 212 says you have to go to a services tribunal, you bring in a suit before the civil court. Now, special law has the overriding effect. We have made it abundantly clear. So under Order 7, Rule 11, when you say barred by law, there are certain bars which are contained in Civil Procedure Code itself. Like Order 2, Rule 2 say all the objections in the plaint or the written or all the claims are to be made in a plaint. You cannot take it later on. It will be barred under Order 2, Rule 2. Like Section 12.2 says that you cannot file a separate suit. You can challenge an order passed on the basis of misrepresentation, collusion, or want of jurisdiction by filing an application under 12.2. So this is a bar contained in CPC. So there are certain bars which are contained in the Civil Procedure Code, but there are certain bars which are contained outside that. So if you have that material available before, the court has that material available before it, and they have a wider look at it and decide an application. After all, this is the duty. Back to square one, I re-emphasize on that. Court has to look at the plaint very minutely, whether legal paragraphs are there, whether it has the jurisdiction or not, and they will make up their mind on the basis of more information they have. There is nothing bad about it. I told you there is a plethora of judgments on that. We only said what was required, that instead of going on and on, why don't you finish it in the first go? And you see, when you return a plaint, you can file it in a proper court of law. And when it is rejected. It is rejected under Order 711, let's say for non-payment of court fee. You can file another one, no problem. You know, if you dismiss on the basis of limitation, and within limitation, you know, no, this is issues can be of three kinds: issues of law, issues of fact, and next questions of law and fact. Well, when it's the issue of law, the administrative judge, when he is seized of a case, who stops him from decided that list? Because, you know, so kindly visualize the situation that administrative judge is as much a judicial officer as much as the trial judge. Only bifurcated into two parts. Come to High Court, you see, the registrar, he does all the service process and the case is right for hearing, then it is put up before the judge. Like in writ petition, only CPC is applicable. And all these actions like affecting service and all these things are done, and then when it is right for hearing, and all these documents we do file. And in Supreme Court and High Court, this is a general practice. And in Karachi, about 40 years back, this has been a practice that all those documents which are filed in court, you are bound to provide a copy to the other side. Over here, what we do? We go to the Almat, you know, give him some illegal gratification, and it is the burden which is to be put by the litigant at least. We have to look at the litigant. He is the one who is suffering pangs of the system. He is your paymaster. He is my paymaster. He is fed up from the system, you know.
Sir, perfectly. I agree with you wholeheartedly on these, and that brings me on to my next. Ji Ali sir.
The question you just read, the answer lies in a very one-liner, only one-liner. The one-liner is that judges are not aware that 711 ought to have been invoked suo motu, ought to have been invoked suo motu. There could not have been any necessity of filing it.
There should have been a requirement for the judges to do on the first day of hearing.
Yes, probably the majority of the lawyers, if not the majority of us, has not gone through the wisdom of 711 Clause D. Of late, there has been a remarkable, probably the best judgment. Those are Bara Supreme Court, page 247. We have now incorporated that. You can see the documents also. It was earlier settled by probably 5-member bench of the Honorable Supreme Court.
Agreed.
The training lies that it should be made, the judges should be made to understand that you are not an administrative judge or a civil judge sitting just like a duck and doing a clerical job. No, it is not the case.
Absolutely right.
A plaint comes to you, you just go through it, whether notices ought to be issued or not. If you are putting it on the defendant's counsel that he is going to, the controversy will never settle.
So this leads us to a question that how do we educate? I don't want to use the word educate because that seems a little belittling. But how do we make our judges then aware of their responsibilities? I mean, we also have to keep this in mind that our average civil judge, for example, in Lahore, has about 100 cases before him or her each and every single day. Expecting this one person, again, looking at it from their perspective, to do this exercise on each and every single case that is before this judge, would that not be unfair on the judge?
Sir, I tell you, at the Judicial Academy, you need to revamp what is being taught and how judges are being trained. Believe you me, the content of the teaching or training at the Judicial Academy is not up to the mark. That is the place where judges need to be trained also. You know, you induct a new judge, give him a very effective training for 1 year, then don't put him as a judge. They introduce a concept of division bench at lower court level as well. The senior judges will train them. And then each year you invite them for refresher. And what kind of teaching is there? What kind of training is there? So that is one area which is totally, you know, lacking. And when we were revamping this legal education at Supreme Court, which we are doing still now, the judicial education, the education of the judges is totally outside the same bit. in our part of the world, even in India and Sri Lanka, the superior judiciary judges also go for training in these new concepts for the judicial academies. This is something lacking over here. Once a lawyer is always a lawyer, once a judge is always a judge, you know, that part is totally missing. And new concepts, they are not aware of. You know, these cyber laws and things like that, how can you decide them unless you have these new techniques over there, and especially the use of this IT. Now, this video conferencing, video link hearings are taking place. Now, online evidence is being recorded. You don't have rules in place. You have not trained lawyers. You have not trained judges. We need to have facilitation centers to help the judges also. There is no concept of, you know, these paralegals over here. There is no concept of facilitation centers over here. So people don't know it. That's why they are afraid. And to sum it up, I tell you, in each city, there are 4 or 5 people who are known as, you know, masters, ustad. You know, if you just take those lawyers into confidence, this is a trickle-down effect. They will teach everyone else also. You know, here people are coming in, there are no training chambers now. There is no concept of that. When you live with these big giants and big people, like Khan Sahib, he has learned it from Ahmed Wahid Khan Sahib, you know. We learned it from our elders. Now this link is missing, and there is no contact between the senior and the young attorney. He wants to learn, have everything overnight. The senior, he is not ready to share his prosperity and his knowledge with the youngsters also. So we need to revive this dialogue. And in this dialogue, I say the senior judges and the retired judges, they should also come in. They should also play their role. Why they go home and they just sit? They are not teaching. You know, we are discussing, and we have top class joint personalities who are retired judges. They don't write a book. They don't go to the judicial academies. They don't come to the bar, and we need to have it. And I tell you frankly, I'm in the midst of completing a conceptual book on CPC. There is no conceptual book and thematic book on CPC. We don't have a textbook, but we have these commentaries. Of course, so I'll put in my bit. You know, we need to have them, and you need to have bench books as well. Nobody is working on it. The Higher Education Commission, they are not working on having textbooks for the lawyers. They are not training them. At the law school, we are not teaching new concepts. After all, the new people who will be appearing in exams, we have no new CPC. Unless it is taken away, unless there are new amendments, this is not by agitation. Other day, a journalist called me and said, what is your take on this new budget and financial budget? People don't read it, how you can criticize it. You have to practice it. You have to give it a go, and we learn by doing it.
I would like to hear from Ali Saab, and just 1 minute. We're already a bit over time, so I would request that the responses should be kept short now. And I will, there are a few questions that I want to get through as well. So first we'll take Ali Saab's comment, and then I'm going to quickly go through those questions that are still pending insofar as these amendments are concerned. Ali Saab. First you, if आप एक comment करने लगे थे.
A culture has to be inoculated in law judiciary. One, that is absolutely probably missing. Two big lawyers addressing a lower court. If you just take their notes, you are through, at least to the extent of, if not the substantive law, the procedural law. 2, 3, there is lack of reciprocal respect. This is alarming, I tell you. This is alarming. Reciprocal aspect, alarming altogether. We are talking of academic, morality has gone, and so has eroded the system itself. A total dialogue needed.
I totally agree with you on that.
A total dialogue needed.
I was mentioning to Ali Saab when we had an earlier conversation, and Kanoi Saab, you'd be, I'd want to share this with you as well. The first time that I argued a I made any final arguments before a trial court was, in this case, I won't take the name of the case, but the plaintiff's counsel was Ahmed Wahid Khan Sahab. I was representing one set of defendants, and Kala Nouri Sahab, you were representing another set of the defendants in that particular case. And I still remember the arguments that took place in court on that day when the matter was finally argued. And I learned more from Ahmed Wahid Khan Saab as my opposing counsel and Kala Nouri Saab as the counsel supporting my brief than any number of research at my own end had prepared me for it. And I remember once the arguments were done, Ahmed Wahid Khan Saab took me to one side outside the court, and he was kind enough to say some good words about how I had performed, and he had suggestions for me. He was telling me that why didn't you look at your case from this aspect? Perhaps you would have been able to make a better argument. So the fact that this interaction is now missing, it's very disheartening for me, because to get me to the place that I am happy at being now, my seniors played a role. My opposing counsels played a role in it. And I'm glad that I could argue against people of such stature. However, moving on to a few questions that remain pending. So, and Alisa, I want your opinion first on this question. One of the critiques that has happened on these amendments is not on merits, but on the fact that the delays in our civil trial system are primarily attributable to a certain segment of politicized lawyers who literally make their living by delaying cases. So no number of amendments is going to fix that. What is your response to this critique?
I would say no. The law is to take its own course. It has to. If not today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow. Let 30 days elapse and your right of written statement is going to close. Good amendment. Good amendment. Howsoever the political pressure might have been. Howsoever the pressure might have been. So it is, yes, one of the contributing factor, but not the only factor. There are not many things. If I have not to blame myself as a contributor negligent, the things will not improve. The ravaiya of our people, law is justice is to be sought and taken not from here but from here. जैसे कहते हैं नमाज दिल से पढ़ो दिमाग से नहीं कहते, पढ़े आप दिमाग से. It has to be taken like that. Judges are to be trained in that perspective, and so is the litigant also. We came to the court of law, and God is witness that High Court was the forum to make a young lawyer a lawyer. High Court was the pedestal. Encouragement, making you understand, hunt the law. Read it like this. These are the judgments. Appreciation. Now by your own conduct, that has gone. That has gone. And the deterioration is visible. Barroom is not meant for tea only. It was a place to discuss law amongst the lawyer. You're sharing your experiences.
Now it's become a place to garner support for beating up a police wala, frankly.
Yes, yes. Yes. How you make people understand that you are in a court of law, wearing a black coat, you are a lawyer. How becoming physical you make people understand that ranking me as a lawyer is asking too much.
Kainori sir, any comment on that, or can I move on to the next question?
Sir, there are no islands in society. Deterioration is across the board. Deterioration is on the part of judiciary as well. You know, the standards have gone down over there also. One thing. Secondly, why these judges, they give so much importance to these gunda elements and these office bearers? Why don't they decide cases on merit? And why should people be sitting in their chambers? They should be deciding cases. So something wrong over there as well. You know, this is not on one part. This is on the other part also. Because of, you know, this kind of impression that we have, like lawyer gardi, which is confined to few people. They are maligning the Vukla gardi. This is not the whole community as such. They are very decent people. So give people a hearing and decide cases on merits, and this will encourage the good guys. You know, this is one reason. And we have to revive the dialogue also. And they say, माना के तगाफुल ना करोगे लेकिन खाक हो जाएंगे हम तुमको खबर होने तक. You know, after all, if the system starts building, I'm a human being first and a lawyer last. If I'm not a good human being, how can I be a good lawyer or a good judge? So we have lost that humanity somewhere, you know. And some people gain by delaying cases. This is not my job. I am to assist the court on merits, and this is for the judges to decide. The judges, when they say that I'm not going to give you any adjournment, we don't seek adjournment, we prepare cases and we argue cases.
So perhaps some sort of self-reflection on our part as lawyers is required, and we need to have a dialogue with our contemporaries and our peers to change the status quo insofar as threatening courts on the basis of your standing at the bar is concerned. One final question. I'd like comments from both of you on this actually, but Kainori sir, you in particular. Now, one of the critiques that has come out regarding these amendments is that in times when we should be moving towards digitization of record and reducing the physical paperwork burden on our courts, we have gone in the other direction, that now so many documents and so many copies, for example, if a case has 10 defendants and a case file comes out to 100 pages, you are essentially asking the plaintiff to file 1,200 pieces of paper in court in environmentally sensitive times. And while we should have been moving towards digitization of our records, of uploading things, we're going in the other direction. What would your comment on that be?
Thank you very much. Actually, if you look at the substantive part, there is now a requirement that you have to keep the electronic record. What we need is, we ought to have a software. We have to have a portal whereby you are given a card, for example. I put in that card and I move into the system. I file all the documents electronically, and it is delivered to the other party electronically. They can obtain the copies electronically also. And you know, for that purpose, IT rules have to be changed, and we can do this paperless kind of thing is prevalent everywhere. This can be introduced in our system of things also. The only thing is that some of the lawyers are not acquainted with this system. What we can do is, we can have recognized facilitation centers. A lawyer who does not understand this, he can go to them and he can make it electronically. And by electronically, I say you can send it one step above also. The judge will look at the screen and decide a case. He can look at these papers while sitting at home also. I, being a lawyer, can look at this. Only thing is that it's the privilege thing. Everybody should not be allowed in. Like I have a CC number in the High Court. If we have a smart card, where I can move into that case if I'm engaged as a lawyer or as a party and I'm concerned with that, we can take care of that. And this is high time. Very good point which you have raised. I have written a paper on that also. Now is the time after this COVID-19, especially. We don't need to have crowding in the courts also. I have been deciding arbitrations online. I have been running classes online. I have been doing these webinars online. I am doing commercial mediations online. This is all doable. Trials are also to be held online. This is big time in Singapore, big time in England. This is prevalent in like 42 states in America also. So we should also be moving towards
In
that.
fact,
India
in
is
the
doing.
US, in fact, in the US, you can even file your pleadings before the court electronically. For example, I was working with someone on a US-based transaction, and the limitation for filing something was, let's say, 12th December. Now, in the US, 12th December means up till 11:59 p.m. and 59 seconds on the 12th of December, because it can be filed electronically, and not that कि court का time 8 से लेके 3 बजे तक है, 3 बजे से पहले पहले file करनी है. So when you say that the period of limitation ends on X date, that day you have the full day then to your disposal.
Yes, it
Alisa,
is.
do you agree that we are at a stage, especially in this post-COVID world, where we can move towards digitization of our pleadings and documentation before the court? Or do you think that the legal fraternity is not yet equipped to handle this?
I believe it is not yet equipped. It is going to happen in some period of time. But start preparing them now. It should not be just bomb blast and haphazard then again. Start preparing. Start harnessing the minds too. But at the same time, the request would be amendments are always required, man-made laws. With the changing circumstances, you do need amendments, both substantive and procedural also. Make it akin with the ground reality now prevailing. But let the art of advocacy remain alive. Let the art of advocacy remain alive. By giving written arguments to the court of law, and if the court feels that your oral arguments are required, I just can't bear this idea. Art of advocacy gone.
This has been one of the key concerns.
No, sir, you will be allowed to argue your case orally again, but something is already there. This concept of skeleton of argument is all around the globe now. The judge will have to meet each and every point. It will only require small time for argument. Then you can amplify what you have submitted in black and white. This is it.
I'm talking of art of advocacy. I just emphasize it.
Sir, with those final comments in mind, we've already gone a bit over time, and I thank both you, Alisa and Kala Norisa, for staying with us for an extended period of time. We are more than privileged to have access to minds as experienced and as brilliant as yours are. So to wrap up, the outcome, in my view, of this discussion is, number one, the amendments by and large, there appears to be a consensus that they are good. While there may be some shortcomings which may need to be revisited, some of those shortcomings stem from the abrupt manner in which these amendments have been put into force, and not necessarily relate to the merits of the amendments themselves. Perhaps, as originally envisioned, pilot projects should have taken place first. There should have been some training, both judicial and the both of our judicial officers and of the legal fraternity, our lawyers in general, apprising them of the changes and informing them on how these new changes will take effect. Another thing that has another positive that has come out from this conversation is that we all agree that law is fluid. We can change this if and when issues are highlighted. We will get an opportunity to revisit even these amendments. Enough time has not elapsed yet for us to make a judgment call on the efficacy of these amendments. Perhaps there may even be increased litigation in the coming months and years to sort out the true import of these amendments. And it is only with time that we can come to a conclusion on that. What is heartening to see is that a sense was being generated that there is a disconnect between the people who were the driving force behind these particular amendments and the legal fraternity in general. Our conversation and the kind words shared with us by Ali Saab clearly reflect that not to be true. Um, the amendments are generally being taken in positive light. And on a side note, even the strikes, we've come to realize after the Punjab Bar Council elections, there has been no strike. So perhaps there was a politically motivated factor behind raising objections to these amendments as well. Um, Hopefully in the coming months and years we will be able to sort out any kinks that may exist in these amendments. Hopefully new precedent would be set which would enable us to implement them not just in letter but in spirit as well, so that the eventual aim of not speedy justice in a destructive manner but granting parties the rights they deserve within a reasonable amount of time frame, maybe we would be able to achieve that. I thank you all for patiently listening to our debate, and I would especially like to thank Ali Saab and Kala Nouri Saab for giving us their time for
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.